in the multiple choice section, and we are at section B. So, question 29. Study the chart below. Alright, so we have based on the chart above, fill in blanks with the correct answers. So we have living things, goes to question X, which says no, and it goes to mushroom. It says yes, does it produce seeds? Yes, goes to rose plant. So we can look at it. What does a mushroom do differently, or what does a mushroom not do that a rose plant, or a plant really, does besides producing seeds? So if you think about it, one of the things is that mushrooms or fungi in general, they don't produce their own food. So, and then if you think about that, question X can then be, can it make its own food? And so, no, it cannot. So it's a mushroom. Yes, alright, and then does it produce seeds? Yes, rose plant. That would make sense, right? So that seems like it's the correct answer. And then we have Y. So what is Y? So it can make its own food. So it's a plant because plants are the only living things which can make their own food. And then does it produce seeds? No. So what type of plant does not produce their own food? So one of the things is a fern. Ferns are plants which don't produce seeds. I mean, I'm not sure whether I said it correctly there, but yeah, ferns are plants which don't produce seeds. Alright. So it produces its own food, yes, but it doesn't produce seeds. So no, it doesn't produce seeds. So Y would be a type of fern, right? So it can be any type of fern, and one of them would be like a bird's nest fern. And that'll be an answer. And then B, how does organism Y reproduce? So how do ferns reproduce? They use spores. Alright. And question 3. The diagram below shows the characteristics of 3 fruits, P, Q, and R, found in a park. A tick shows the presence of the characteristics of the fruits. Alright, study your chart below, and then based on the information from the chart above, state one similarity between plant B and plant D. So just looking at the chart, B and D similarities is that they both reproduce from seeds. So what we write is both reproduce from seeds. Or we can actually say reproduce using seeds. Right, because this one goes down here and this one goes here. So those are similarities. This right here is where the path splits, so this this is what we're looking for, right? And B, based on the information from the table and the chart on the previous page, which plants A, B, C, and D in the chart best represents plants that bear fruits P, Q, and R? So looking at A, B, and C, D. A does not reproduce from seeds, so we know that only seed-bearing plants produce fruits. So that would mean that A is not part of it because A, no seeds. It doesn't have seeds, so it can't have fruits. And then what does B do? So look at this. B are fruit. The fruits are dispersed only by wind. All right, so this is by wind. That's right here, so it's easy to see. And then C, what does C do? So C is by animals. And D. Okay, let's look at D. D is none of them. So none of the above. Alright, so let's just write that down right there. And then so P is what plant? So looking at this table here now, P has edible juicy flesh. Alright. So usually when a plant has edible juicy flesh, they usually are dispersed by animals because animals will eat them because they taste good. Meaning that P would be plant C. Alright. And then Q. Alright, let's look at plant Q. Plant Q has wing-like structure. So why would a fruit have a wing-like structure? So looking at what we have, it's probably not D because D is none of the above. And then B, C is already dispersed by animals and it's already fruit P. So looking at it, it has to be B, which will make sense because by wind, if it has a wing-like structure, that means that it will be easily dispersed by the wind. So Q should be plant B. And then R. Hold on, oops. R has a pod-like structure. So already by process of elimination, we can already see that R should be plant D. However, just to make sure, usually pod-like structure they disperse by splitting or something like or they use other functions in order to reproduce. So we have our answers. P is plant C, Q is plant B, and R is plant D. Right. And then the number of young plants that bear fruits P and R were found at various distances from their parent plants as shown in the graph below. And then based on the information above, which bar 1 or 2 represents the result recorded for plants or fruit P? Explain your answer. Alright, so just looking at what we have. So bar 1. Okay, so remember the fruit P is dispersed through animals. Alright, so looking at bar 1, there is the further it gets, the less young plants there are. And then looking at bar 2, it seems to be a very amount of young plants away from the parent plant. So fruit P is dispersed by animals. So what will make the most sense here would probably be bar 2. Hold on, just make it more clear. Bar 2 would make the most sense here. And this is actually because the number of young plants at each distance is varied, right? If we're looking at the bars. And this would make a lot of sense as fruit P, the fruit P has juicy flesh, so it's dispersed by animals as we've discussed before. And then all the animals that eat it will move differently and they'll go from place to place. And then the indigestible seeds that they pass will then be spread out randomly. So bar 2, as it shows, is more varied, so it'll make more sense that way, right? So let's just put that into words. So what we'll say is bar 2 and explain our answer. It'll be that. So bar 2 shows that the number of young plants at each distance is varied. Alright? And then what it says, as fruit P has juicy flesh, it is dispersed by animals. Alright. And the animals will all move differently, and the indigestible seeds they pass will be spread out randomly. Right? Does that make sense? Question 31. The diagram below shows the plant. And then A, state the main function of part G. So as I've said before, when you have diagrams like this, it's really good to label. So part G are the leaves. And this looks like fruit. So state the main function of part G. So part G is the leaves. So what we write here, we know what the leaves do, right? Is they do photosynthesis. So we can write photosynthesis. And then we write what it does. So photosynthesis, and then we can write that what is photosynthesis, in which it traps light energy to make food for the plant, right? Clean cut. And then B, state the part of the flower that part H developed from. So we identified the part H as the fruit. So we know where the fruit comes from, right? And in a flower, it will come from the ovary. All right. And then, so C, 4 parts of the plant are listed below. Draw arrows in the diagram below to show how food is transported in the plant. So, okay, so let's see what they do. So leaves, we know where the leaves is where the food is created. And then the stem, okay, so the stem is transport. So we know the rest don't really do much in the production or transportation of food. So that would mean that leaves go to the stem, and the stem transports it to both the roots and the fruits, because fruits will need it, and then the roots will also need it. So that's pretty simple. And question 32. Ali wanted to find out how the distance between the lamp and the test tube of an aquatic plant would affect the number of bubbles produced by the plant. He prepared 2 setups, A and B, as shown below. Alright, and he counted the number of bubbles produced per minute for both setups. His results are as shown. So A, based on Ali's results, explain how the distance between the lamp and the test tube of the aquatic plant affect the rate of photosynthesis. Alright, so from what we can see is, so B produces more bubbles, right? So more bubbles here. And okay, so in the diagram, instead of B, there's only 1 bubble here. Oh, actually, there's 2 bubbles. Never mind. I think there's 2 bubbles. So they have the equal number of bubbles. All right. And then we just look at this. So A and B. B produces 33 bubbles per minute. A produces 17 bubbles per minute. So B produces more bubbles. So what really produces the bubbles with the aquatic plants in the water? It will be photosynthesis, right? So photosynthesis would produce oxygen, and the higher the rate of photosynthesis, the more bubbles produced because the more oxygen produced. So because the bubbles are oxygen, right? Like these little bubbles are oxygen. So what we can write here then is that as the distance between the test tube and the lamp increases, the amount of light the plant receives decreases, right? That would make sense because there's lesser light when you put it further away because light intensity is decreased. And then what after right is the rate of photosynthesis decreases, producing less bubbles. So when the distance between the test tube and the lamp increases, the amount of light the plant receives decreases, right? Because it's further away, so light intensity decreases, then the plant can't receive as much light. And then because the plant can't receive that much light, the rate of photosynthesis decreases because less light is captured and less light is trapped. And when rate of photosynthesis decreases, less bubbles are produced because less oxygen is produced. That's quite simple. And then B, state two variables that Ali has to keep constant when conducting this experiment. So just thinking about it, one very important thing is the number of plants. Right, so that's one. That's one variable because if there's more plants, then more photosynthesis will occur, meaning more bubbles. Right? And then two. So the intensity of the light of the lamp, right? That's the other variable. That's something very important because if the lamp is more intense, then more light is given to the plant. So if one setup has more light, it will produce more bubbles. So C. Ali recorded the initial mass of the aquatic plants before the experiment and the final mass of the aquatic plants in each setup after 3 days. Both lamps were switched on continuously for 3 days. Which plant will have a greater increase in mass? And explain your answer. So first we identify which plant will have a greater increase in mass. So, just thinking about it, it will be the plant in setup B, right? Because the plant in setup B will receive more light, meaning that it will be able to do more photosynthesis. And when it can do more photosynthesis, it can create more food. And when it has more food, it will either grow faster or it will store it as starch, and therefore there'll be greater mass. So let's just write that down. So the plant in setup B will have a greater increase in mass. And then the lamp was placed closer, comma, making the light intensity received higher than in set up A, right? And then this allows the plant in B to trap more light for photosynthesis and produce more food. The food is stored as starch and increases the mass. So the plant in setup B will have a greater increase in mass, and the lamp was placed closer, making the light intensity received higher than in setup A. And this allows the plant in B to trap more light for photosynthesis and produce more food. The food is stored as starch and increases the mass. Question 33. Two identical cups, X and Y, were placed on a rod. A burning candle was placed below cup X as shown below. So A. Would the rod tilt towards X, remain balanced, or tilt downwards towards Y? Explain your answer. So, looking at it, what actually happened would be, I'm just going to use red, is that the air around would heat up, right? So it'll go upwards. Alright. And it'll push this cup up. And so this will go up, right? Hold on. And when the rod goes up that way, this will go down, right? So will it tilt downwards towards X or tilt downwards towards Y? It will tilt. So the rod will tilt downwards towards Y, right? And then explain your answer. So the candle will heat up the air around it, and the heated air will push cup X upwards, and then this makes the rod tilt downwards towards Y, right? So we write that down. So the air around the candle would be heated up due to the candle. And then the heated air rises, pushing X, cup X I should say, and making the rod tilt downwards. Oh, hold on. Towards Y. Okay. Changes were made to the setup by replacing cup Y with cup M and made of a different material. Alright? So B, it was observed that the rod was balanced only when the candle was placed under cup X. Explain the observation. Alright, so if it is balanced only when the candle is placed underneath X, that would mean that M has to be lighter than cup X, or cup X has to be heavier than M. So we can write that down. So cup X has greater mass than cup M. And why so? It's before, alright, so if you think about it. So before the candle, let's just say, right? So this is, let's say this is the rod. This is cup X. Hold on, actually. This is the string right here. Alright, this is the rod. And then this is that. Cup X looks like this. M is here. X. So what it would look like before there's a candle here is that it wouldn't be balanced. Alright. It would actually be tilted like that. Because X would be heavier. Right? And then when you put the candle here, right, then X will go up and it becomes balanced like that. Alright. So I'm just going to erase all this. So we write that down. So before the candle was placed, the rod would have tilted downwards towards X. So by placing the candle below X, the heated air would push X up and balance the rod. Alright.